Hey, and welcome to The Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Why don't we start with Clemson? Clemson went 6-2 in conference last year, 10-3 overall, and it was widely viewed as a disappointment, which is weird because they won 10 games. There were clearly questions. It was their first year without Trevor Lawrence, and DJ U maybe didn't work out, at least in the early going, to the extent that many of us thought. But Clemson was still a good team. They still had the defense. They had a lot of injuries that they had to deal with, right? Like it wasn't like it was everything going according to the script for Dabo Swinney. It definitely took a little bit of a left turn.
It did. And look, it's not fully fair to call this offense atrocious. Relative to the perceived talent, the recruiting talent, the successive development that Tony Elliott, and obviously before him, he teamed up with Jeff Scott running this offense. It was pretty atrocious in terms of the disappointment of the receivers and the drops and the offensive line play and DJU's struggles with consistency and overthrows. It was, I don't think any of us saw this kind of precipitous drop coming last year. And so certainly DJU, and I know he's lost some weight, and they're looking at offensive tweaks and wrinkles with a new offensive coordinator, an internal promotion in Brandon Streeter, quarterbacks coach for the last few years, that I suppose that's their pushing the rusted sled uphill in Russia. It was just, even in winning games, there were so many tough stretches on offense that were heightened because of how good the defense was last year. The defense was extraordinary last year, and I expect it to be so, especially up front. They're deep. They're crazy talented along the line. Like, the narrative isn't a mystery here. It's what can Clemson's offense with a new coordinator ascend to? Because it feels, even though the new defensive coordinator in Wes Goodwin is basically fully unproven, even as a position coach, he's sort of that boy genius, supposedly, allegedly.
Okay.
Right. That the narrative is the defense should be good in year one without Brent Venables, just because of the talent factor and the depth factor. And it's, can the offense do much more to hold up their end of the bargain? And if not, how deep into the season do we start asking, if it's not already, are we sure DJU should be the guy under center and not a true freshman? A sort of thin true freshman in Cade Klubnik, but should we be having that conversation sooner rather than later? Or does Clemson give Dabo give DJU time if Clemson is winning, but not necessarily in the manner that they should be given some of the teams they're playing? That's the narrative to me.
Yeah, and the schedule isn't exactly the easiest out there, is it?
Schedule is, I think it's okay. They have NC State at home with some nice buffers. The end that's the meaty end. It's not the meaty middle, but there are only 4 true road games because Clemson is close enough. Well, they have Georgia Tech, right, to open the season in Atlanta. That's close enough that they're going to fill that stadium. That's going to be a much more orange and purple stadium than it is gold and navy, whatever Georgia Tech's official colors are. My apologies. They have a bye before Notre Dame, and the end is at Notre Dame, Louisville, Miami, South Carolina. We think Notre Dame is going to be at least pretty good to good, and that's on the road. That's going to be tricky, but they do have that bye. Louisville, Miami, South Carolina. I mean, there are any sort of outcomes that you can tell me about those teams that I would believe. So, not amazing, but I don't think it's terrible. I think Clemson is more talented than literally every team on their schedule, just because of that defensive line. I like Will Shipley. I like Kobe Pace. I'm worried about receiver, but there's potential there. There's young potential there. I'm worried about the line a little bit, but still, you have to measure them against who they're playing, and there's no reason they should be winning fewer than 10 regular season games. There just is not an acceptable reason.
It's interesting because so much of the discussion around Clemson over the last couple of years has been the talent on the field, and you have assumed the coaching staff in like a static place because there hasn't been a whole lot of turnover.
Right.
But now both offensive and defensive coordinators go elsewhere. I'm curious on the Dabo level, just how he deals with that. We're making a pretty big assumption that it's just going to work out, that I mean, he himself promoted from within, right? He sort of knows what that path looks like, and there's clearly a lot of talent on the roster, but is it fair to just not assume that it's going to work perfectly? Is that crazy?
Oh, yeah. The team is likely going to waste an incredible defense. And that's all relative, because going 10-2 kind of wastes a 12-0 playoff caliber defense.
Right.
It's hard to see, given the specific struggles with footwork and decision-making and accuracy, DJU getting significantly better. I think he'll get better. I think he will fulfill some of the promise of what he showed against Notre Dame on the road. But even then, he struggled. He struggled, and it's hard to look at that line and say, did he, though? I get that. But when the bar is Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, I don't know, man. I think we just have to readjust Clemson's ceiling from national championship caliber most, if not every year, to really, really, really good. And if things break right, they can hang with or beat most, if not every team. I know there's a lot of qualifiers there. I hear myself saying it. So I just think we have to readjust the ceiling, because what we're seeing from Ohio State, what we're seeing from Alabama, the teams Clemson has until last year measured itself against, or been measured against, is those teams are in the portal. Those teams are always finding quarterbacks. Those teams, and when Clemson's not in the portal to fill gaps on the offensive line or at quarterback or at receiver, because last year's receiving core outside of Justin Ross wasn't all that impressive, that Clemson's not changing with the times. And it's evolve or die. And if Dabo has the mindset, let's just go with what got us here. Let's do the Clemson thing. We're keeping our heads down. It worked for us before. It'll work again. All good until it isn't.
Yeah.
All good until it isn't. And so I think Clemson should be really, 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 really good this year. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. But the question then is, where's T. Higgins? Where's Justin Ross? Where is, Travis Etienne? Guys who were so good that it didn't matter that the play calling or the offensive line weren't A+. And if they don't have that type of first-round quarterback talent, and they have to get by on only being good and not great, do they lose to NC State again? Do they lose to Pitt again? I know the schedule is not the same as it was last year, but then you become more susceptible to losing to good teams when you're merely very good.
You know where I stand.
Yeah.
I'm firmly entrenched on the club level.
Yeah, I know.
I'm in the club level. I want seat number 1 on the club level for when Cade Klubnik takes over in week 6.
Yeah. And we know that Dabo is not above making that difficult quarterback decision he did with Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence. That
he's done it.
If there's a clear new dude who is clearly better than the old dude, even if the old dude is a redshirt sophomore, Dabo will make that move. But it's difficult to see new full-time play caller, okay to decent offensive line, questions about receiver, adding up into, they're just a Cade Klubnik away from being incredible.
Yeah, right.
That's hard to see. So, that's where I have Clemson as a 10-11 win program because of, Trent Simpson and Miles Murphy, all these incredible players on defense. They have questions, I suppose, at corner. I think questions at corner are only go as far as what the pass rush looks like as well, and the pass rush should be great. So I think they're going to figure things out at corner. I just love the fact that their defensive coordinator has no experience. He was with Bruce Arians. He's considered this boy genius. He's 35, 36 years old. Wes Goodwin has never coached a position, has never called a defense, and called it in the bowl game for Clemson. I believe it was the Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando against Iowa State. Did a good job, but they're turning to an internal boy wonder analyst.
There's a little bit of a little big league situation going on here, isn't there?
A little bit. Little Eric Manginius. Wasn't he the video coordinator for Bill Belichick?
Yeah.
He didn't have huge experience before getting the Jets job. So, it's interesting.
All right.
It's a swing. It's absolutely a swing from Dabo, and I can't blame him for that. If that's the guy, that's the guy.